Hello, lovelies. I hope that you guys are having a wonderful day and that it continues to be as wonderful as it has been. And if it has not been a wonderful day, I hope it becomes absolutely amazing. Today, we are reading All the Young Dudes, Chapter 25, Second Year, After Hours, by MsKingBean89. Friday, 6th September 1972. Once the initial ice had been broken, the questions came flooding in. That evening, after dinner, all four boys sat on Remus's bed. When did it happen? Does Dumbledore know? Have you ever, attacked someone? What's it like? Where do you go when it happens? Remus gnawed his bottom lip. He'd never talked about his condition before, not to anyone, except for his conversations with Madame Pomfrey last year. None of the muggles he'd grown up with would have believed him, and he'd been led to believe that wizards would shun him, he tried to work out where to start. I was 5 years old when it happened. I don't really remember much before that. Yeah, Dumbledore knows. I don't think I've ever hurt anyone. I think I'd probably know if I did. So when you turn, you can remember what it's like? Sirius asked eagerly. Being a wolf? Not really. Amos thought hard. Maybe I can remember feeling stuff, but I don't think I have a human brain while I'm like that. It's more like a really bad dream. I always thought werewolves were more... Peter looked at him thoughtfully. I don't know, scary. Raymond shrugged. So is that what happened to your dad? Sirius asked abruptly. Did he get killed by a werewolf that bit you? Remus flinched, not because of his father, but because he wasn't so used to hearing the W word quite so much. He'd never said it himself. No, he replied. My dad, he killed himself after I was bitten. So I suppose it was because of me? My mother, she's a muggle. I thought it was probably a bit much for her, so she packed me off to St. Edmund's. There was an uncomfortable sort of silence. Have you ever met? Sirius began, but James gave him a sharp look. That's enough, Black. Leave him alone. They eventually split off to start their homework, and James went for a run around the grounds before it got dark. Quidditch trials were coming up, and he was becoming more obsessed with fitness and endurance by the day. He tried to get Peter and Sirius to go with him, but they begged off. Bloody slave driver, Peter muttered as he left. I told him I'm not even trying out. I think I probably will, Sirius said casually. They need a beater anyway. Homework was eventually cast aside in favor of a particularly aggressive game of exploding snap between the three of them. With a record spinning off its needle, the Beatles, because Peter pleaded for a break from Bowie. Later, after lights out, Remus sat up reading a book Sirius had lent him. It was a Muggle paperback, science fiction. He'd seen a few films like it at the local cinema back at St. Edmund's, but he didn't know there were books too. It was just getting exciting when he heard the telltale creak of the floorboards that meant Sirius was paying James a visit. He heard the curtains rustle, and Flo whispering, before a sudden, unnatural void of sound, which meant someone had cast a silencing spell. Remus ignored it, scrunching up into his duvet and focusing on his book. It was perhaps 20 minutes later that he heard the silencing spell being recalled. It was as though he had been deaf in one ear and could suddenly hear again. He listened to the curtain rustle again as Sirius climbed back and padded softly across the room. This time, however, his footsteps came closer. Much to Rams's surprise, his own bed curtains cracked open. Sirius' long, pale face peered in on him. "Hiya," he whispered. "Hi," Ramus replied. "What's up?" "Saw your wand light." He nodded. "Can I come in?" Okay." Sirius grinned and slipped inside easily, kneeling on the bed in front of Ramus, who drew his legs up to his chest, setting the book aside. "Sonoro Quincis," Sirius whispered, casting the soundproofing charm so that they could not disturb the others. "How's the book?" He looked at the paperback resting on the pillow next to Ramus. "Good," Ramus replied, noncommittedly. "What's up?" he repeated. "I was just talking to James," he said, settling down, sitting cross-legged. "He reckons I've upset you, asking questions about your dad." "Oh." Ramus cocked his head, surprised. "No, I'm okay. It doesn't upset me. I'm used to it. That's what I told James. Right?" Sirius didn't leave. He just kept looking at Ramus. It was making him uncomfortable. He was only wearing a thin vest to sleep in, which displayed a number of red and silver marks crisscrossing his bare arms and shoulders. Sirius stared openly. "How did you get your scars?" he asked quietly. Ramus frowned, pulling the bed sheets up to his neck. "How did you get yours?" he snapped, instantly regretting it. Sirius stopped gazing at his skin and recoiled, eyes full of hurt and surprise. From my parents. The Lassero curse. It's how they discipline us," he said, his voice a little robotic. "Sorry." Ramus dropped the duvet. He sighed, extending his arms so that Sirius could see it better. "I do them to myself when I change. See?" He pulled down one shoulder of his vest and twisted slightly to show him 4 long white claw marks. "Wow," Sirius breathed, on his knees again, leaning forward with his lit wand to get a better look. "How do you do it?" "I don't know. I'm not exactly myself. Madame Pomfrey reckons it's frustration, because it's in my nature to attack people, and I don't have anyone to attack." "Where do they put you?" "There's this old house. McGonagall and Pomfrey take me there every month. There's a passageway under the Whomping Willow." "Does McGonagall watch you?" "No, it's too dangerous. I think they use spells to keep me locked in." "Sounds horrible." Remus shrugged. "No, it's not that bad as back at St. Eddie's. They have a cell for me there, with a silver door. When I first got there, Matron thinks I was too little to remember, but they put me in a cage." Sirius looked at him sharply. "That's disgusting." "I don't know." Remus was surprised by his reaction. "It was to keep everyone else safe, and I can only have been the size of a cub. Sirius said promptly. "Huh?" "A baby wolf is a cub. Dogs are puppies." "Oh. So, where'd you get bitten?" Sirius had swapped concern for curiosity once more. "Oh, here." Remus patted his left side, just above his hip. Sirius looked at him expectantly. Remus sighed again. "Do you want to see?" Sirius nodded eagerly, leaning forward again as Remus lifted his shirt at the hem. He barely noticed the bite mark anymore, though it stood out as much as it ever had. It was a huge scar, evidence of an unbelievably large jaw. You could count every tooth, if you were so inclined. The deep dimples marred Remus's soft skin. Sirius got very close now, so that Remus had to lean all the way back to stop their heads from bumping. "Oh, wow," he breathed, lost in his observation like someone who'd unearthed a great archaeological treasure. Remus felt Sirius's long hair brush his skin, and the warmth of his breath, and pushed him away quickly. "God, Black, you're so weird." Sirius just grinned that serious black grin. Friday 13th, October, 1972. "So what exactly are we doing here?" James whispered, sounding amused. "And why did we have to bring this stupid cloak?" Sirius said, slightly muffled under the fabric. "It's hours until curfew." "I'm hot," Peter complained. "Shut up, all of you," James commanded. "I'm trying to concentrate." "Concentrate on what? Ouch!" Remus kicked Sirius in the shin. "I said shut up, bloody oak. Wake." Sirius muttered, and he was quiet after that. Remus sniffed. It definitely smelled like chocolate. The whole corridor. Only a faint whiff, if you turned the corner, but richer and sweeter the further you walked towards a statue near the middle. The scent had been driving Remus mad for weeks, since he noticed it late last term. It had to have to do something with the statue. A witch with a hunched back and an eye patch. It was a horrible portrait. He hoped that the artist had just been particularly unkind, and the poor woman hadn't really looked like that. "Have you brought us here to meet your new girlfriend, Lupin?" James asked. Remus smirking as Remus continued to stare at the one-eyed witch. "Why'd you keep sniffing like that?" Sirius whined. "I don't want to be this close if you're getting a cold." "Can any of you smell that?" "Smell what?" "Chocolate. Definitely chocolate." "Chocolate? Where?" Peter suddenly perked up. "I can't smell anything," Sirius said. "Me neither," said James. "It's coming from the statue." Remus continued, unperturbed by his friend's teasing. He reached out and touched the stone carefully through the cloak. "What?" "Reckon the old bent's hump is packed with sweets or something." Sirius was starting to sound bored and irritable. It bothered Remus a little bit. Sometimes he and Peter got dragged along on all sorts of stupid missions by the other two, but if he and James weren't in charge, then Sirius always acted up. "No," Remus said, "I reckon it's one of those secret passages from that book of yours." "Really?" Now Sirius was paying attention. "Can you actually smell chocolate? Is that something special thing you can do?" "Yeah. It doesn't lead to the kitchens," Peter said naughtily. "They're on the ground floor. Hufflepuff told me." "How can we get in?" "Password. Like the common room." "Scallywag!" Peter shouted at the witch. Eagerly. Nothing happened. "I didn't mean it to be the same password, Peter," James said. He was being kind, but Sirius and Remus were already in fits of laughter. "What about Alohomora?" Sirius suggested, recovering. Remus tried it, but nothing happened. "That's for locks anyways. Isn't it some kind of revealing unseen entryways?" "Oh yeah." Sirius nodded, getting excited. "There is, Dissendium." He tapped his wand on the witch's hump. Immediately, the hump opened, sliding away, leaving a large gap, easily big enough for them to file inside, one at a time. The smell of chocolate grew even stronger, and now Remus could also smell earth, fresh air, and other people. They lost no time slipping inside, and the hump closed behind them. "Lumos," they all said in unison, throwing off the cloak. James folded it up under his arm and immediately assumed leadership. "Come on, then," he said, holding his wand ahead of them, lighting up the dark passageway. "Let's go." They all followed. Remus didn't mind. He'd done his bit. It was a long walk down a flight of cold stone stairs, through a tunnel that was earthy and damp, but the scent grew stronger, and when they finally reached the end, there was another staircase, leading to a wooden trapdoor. They looked at each other and silently agreed that James should go first. They watched him ascend, pushing open the door, and poke his head through. Remus felt that they were holding their breath, watching James's torso disappear up into the unknown. "I don't believe it," he laughed above them. "You have to see." He hauled himself upwards, vanishing altogether. Sirius scurried up after him, not wanting to miss anything. Remus was next, but Peter gathered behind them. "Where are we?" Sirius was asking, staring around the dark little room. They were surrounded by neatly stacked boxes and crates. The smell of confectionery by now was overwhelming. "I think we're actually in Hogsmeade," James said excitedly. "This is the storeroom of Honeydukes." "The sweet shop?" Remus asked, though thought it was pretty redundant at this point. Sirius had ripped open a box which looked to contain at least 500 boxes of chocolate frogs. Remus had heard all about Hogsmeade from the other boys. They'd all visited on family holidays before. It was one of the only entirely magical villages in Britain. Other students were allowed to go on their weekends, and often brought back paper bags of bulging with sweets from Honeydukes. Standing in the cellar at the moment, Remus could not have been happier with the outcome of this mission. They finally coaxed Peter up and spent a good hour exploring the shop, marveling at their own brilliance. They chose a little bit of everything, with Remus directing them, as the only one with any kind of shoplifting experience. James thought Remus didn't see him slip a bag of sickles and galleons from his robes and leave them on the counter as they were leaving. The marauders returned to the Gryffindor common room, with their pockets heavy and huge grins on their faces. A prefect took points from all of them for missing curfew, but they couldn't care any less. When they all lay in bed for hours later, pretending not to have stomach aches, Sirius called out, "That's definitely going on the map." And that is chapter 25. I hope that you all enjoyed it, and that you enjoyed it, actually. That's all I have to say. Please take care of yourselves, and remember to eat 3 meals a day, and drink 64 ounces of water, and yes, that is it. I love you all. Thank you for tuning in.